All right, so today we're going to be looking at history.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing it through the lens of someone named Emily and looking at why she thinks history is so important.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool journey she has,
Yeah.
especially as she goes from kind of like these simple stories to like really grappling with some of the complexities of like modern history and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's really interesting because when you think about how she starts out,
Yeah,
she doesn't really start with dates and names and all that stuff that most people kind of think about with history.
right.
She starts with stories,
Yeah,
which I think is really interesting because it gets at the heart of like how history began.
right. Like before written records.
Exactly.
It was oral tradition.
Yeah, it's just passing down these stories
Yeah.
and values and like a sense of who we are through stories.
Yeah, it's like imagining, campfires.
Oh, totally.
And the elders sharing tales of like, bravery and, lessons learned, and that's how history was kept alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then she comes to this like really pivotal moment in her understanding of history.
Okay.
And that is the invention of writing by the Sumerians.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And like specifically, she learns about this clay tablet
Oh, cool.
called the Kish tablet.
Okay.
And it's considered one of the earliest examples of writing.
Wow.
And on it, they found records of like land transactions.
Oh, wow.
And even like boasts from a king.
So it wasn't just, epic poems and myths.
No.
It was like nitty-gritty details of life.
Yes.
Wow. That's kind of a shift from, the romantic image of storytelling around the fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think for her, that discovery really highlighted the power of writing.
Oh, yeah.
Like suddenly history wasn't just this thing passed down through generations,
Right.
through word of mouth.
Yeah.
It was documented. It could be scrutinized. It could be debated,
Yeah.
even challenged.
Right.
Like it became more tangible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to explore like the Egyptians.
Oh,
Yeah. And their meticulous record keeping.
on papyrus scrolls.
Right. Yeah. Didn't they document like beer rations for workers?
Oh, yeah. They documented everything
Wow.
from like the achievements of the pharaohs
Right?
to just daily life.
Wow.
Like what people were doing.
That's incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
And it gives us such a rich understanding of their civilization.
Yeah, it's amazing how these ancient civilizations really grasped the importance of preserving their past.
Yeah.
Even those little details, it's
Yeah.
like they knew that even the small things could offer like valuable insights for future generations.
Absolutely. And Emily's starting to get this too,
Okay.
especially when she has this teacher
Oh, cool.
who emphasizes that history isn't just memorizing facts.
Okay.
It's about understanding how people lived in the past
Right.
and how they interacted with each other.
Right.
And I think for her, that really helped her see history as a way to learn from the successes
Yeah.
and the mistakes of those who came before us.
To build a better future. So it's not just about looking back, it's about applying those lessons.
Right.
Yeah.
To the present and to the future.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so as she starts going deeper,
Yeah.
she's exploring different historical periods.
Okay.
Ancient Greece and Rome,
Mm-hmm.
the Middle Ages,
Yep.
the Renaissance,
Uh-huh.
all these different periods. But instead of just focusing on the major events,
Yeah.
she's like, wait a minute, what about the people?
Yeah, what about just everyday people?
Exactly.
It's so easy to get caught up in, the kings and queens and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
And, the famous battles.
Yeah,
But what about everyone else?
exactly. So she's learning about like the artisans who built the Roman aqueducts,
Oh, cool.
the women who ran households during the Middle Ages,
Mm-hmm.
the scribes who copied manuscripts,
Yeah.
like all those people whose names we might not know,
Right.
but were essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like she's trying to see the human side of history,
Yeah.
the stories behind the big events. But how does she deal with the fact that, history is often told from the perspective of like
Oh, yeah.
the victors or the powerful or the elite?
Right.
Like, how do we make sure we don't miss those other viewpoints?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's something that she really grapples with
Yeah.
as her understanding of history evolves.
Okay.
Especially as she starts getting into the 20th century
Okay.
and she starts to encounter all of the complexities
Right.
of historical interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So she's like starting to see that history isn't just like a single narrative.
Right.
It's a collection of like perspectives
Yeah.
and interpretations and sometimes like completely different versions of the same events.
Exactly. And that's a challenging thing to grapple with,
Oh, yeah. I bet.
especially when you've had this like kind of straightforward view.
Right. Yeah.
So she starts to think really critically
Okay.
about the sources she's looking at,
Yeah.
questioning like, why is this person writing this down? what are their motivations?
Yeah.
And then thinking about how different groups of people might have experienced the same event in totally different ways.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, it
Yeah.
makes you realize that history isn't just about what happened, but like how it's been understood and like
Yeah.
framed.
Over time.
Yeah, over time, exactly.
Yeah.
So how does she like deal with all this complexity?
Well, she starts to look for different voices,
Okay.
different perspectives.
Yeah.
Like she's reading accounts from people who were marginalized.
Okay.
She's looking at oral histories.
Yeah.
And she's trying to see historical events from different angles.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it helps her to get a more like nuanced understanding.
Yeah, a more complete picture.
Exactly.
Yeah, it reminds me of how like our understanding of ancient civilizations has been totally transformed
Oh, totally.
by like, recent discoveries.
Yeah, new archaeological finds.
Yeah, and even by like scholars who are like challenging the traditional ways of thinking.
Right.
It's like we're constantly learning new things.
Yeah, history is always changing.
Right, and uncovering these hidden stories and
Yeah.
like revising what we thought we knew.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, it's dynamic.
It's not this like fixed thing.
Right, it's like an ongoing conversation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like always being rewritten and reinterpreted.
And it seems like, Emily's journey is like a reflection of how actual historians work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's about, constantly questioning,
Yeah.
researching.
Digging deeper.
Yeah, and like piecing together all these different bits of information
Yeah.
to try to get as close to like the truth as possible.
Right, and accepting that we may never really have the full truth.
Yeah,
There are always going to be new things to discover.
right. New perspectives to consider.
Yeah,
New questions.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes history so fascinating.
Speaking of questions,
Okay.
what do you think is like the most important thing about Emily's story so far?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's her realization
Yeah.
about the role that everyday people play
Okay.
in shaping history.
Okay.
She moves beyond the traditional focus on like great leaders
Right.
and big events
Yeah.
to recognize the impact of all those individuals
Yeah.
who may not have made it into the history books.
Right. All those people that we don't know their names.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is a good point.
It's easy to get caught up in the grand sweep of history,
Totally.
but ultimately it's the choices that individuals make
Right.
that create those big narratives.
That's a really empowering idea.
It is.
Like it connects us to the past
Yes.
in a much more personal way.
Yeah.
It's like we're not just passive observers.
No.
We're active participants
Exactly. We're all shaping history.
right now.
Yes. With every choice we make.
It's like that museum visit that she takes.
Oh, yeah.
Where she's looking at those everyday objects like,
Right.
pottery or tools.
Yeah.
And it hits her that like these were once part of someone's life.
Yeah. It's a powerful moment.
Yeah.
She realizes that history isn't just something in a book.
Right.
It's all around us.
It's like in the fabric of our lives.
Exactly.
So if like everyone makes history,
Yeah.
what does that mean for us?
Right.
Like how can we actually connect with the past in a meaningful way?
Right.
And then use that knowledge to make a better future?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with realizing that understanding history isn't just about knowing what happened.
Okay.
It's about understanding why it happened.
Right. The causes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like what forces were at play?
Yeah.
What decisions did people make?
Right.
And what were the consequences of those decisions?
So it's not just about dates and names.
Yeah.
It's about like motivations and circumstances. It's
Yeah.
like being a detective.
It is. You're
Yeah.
piecing together all these clues
Yeah.
to understand the bigger picture.
That makes me think about historical interpretation again. Like how the same event can be seen in so many different ways, depending on who's telling the story.
It's important to remember that
Yeah.
history's rarely black and white.
Right.
It's full of nuance.
Yeah.
And understanding that is key
Yeah.
if we want to learn from the past.
It's like Emily's journey.
Exactly.
She started out with this like really simple view of history.
Yeah.
But then as she explored different perspectives
Right.
and like challenged her own assumptions,
Oh, yeah.
her understanding just became so much richer.
Right. And more complex.
Exactly.
And that's a journey we can all take.
Yeah.
It's about being curious,
Okay.
seeking out different voices,
Yeah.
and being willing to really engage with ideas
Okay.
even when they challenge our own.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does make you think,
Mm-hmm.
about your own place in everything. It's like
Yeah.
Emily's journey is reminding us that we're not just living our own lives. Like
Right.
we're part of this huge
Yeah.
story of humanity.
Exactly. And that story has, moments of progress,
Uh-huh.
But also moments of like immense struggle.
Yeah, there's good and bad.
Totally.
It's messy,
It's complicated.
but it's also kind of amazing.
It is.
You know, we see how resilient humans are.
Yeah.
How much we've accomplished.
Yeah, and how much we're capable of.
But then also
Yeah.
capable of, like, causing harm.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part.
Right. So knowing all this, like, complexity of history,
Yeah.
how do we actually, like, move forward?
That's the big question.
Yeah, because it's one thing to, like, learn about it.
Right.
But how do we use that knowledge to, like, actually make things better?
I think it starts with understanding not just what happened, but why things happened the way they did.
Okay, so, like, analyzing, you know, all the forces that were at play.
Yeah, all the decisions that were made.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes those decisions had unintended consequences.
Right, things don't always turn out how people planned.
Exactly.
So it's like being a detective almost.
Oh,
piecing together clues.
yeah.
Yeah, to get that bigger picture.
And being open to different interpretations.
Right.
And challenging our own assumptions.
That makes me think about, like, historical interpretation again.
Oh, yeah.
Like how the same event can be understood in such different ways.
Yeah, depending on who's telling the story
Exactly.
and what perspective they're bringing.
Right, so it's super important to remember that
It is.
history is not always clear cut.
Right, it's nuanced.
Yeah, and understanding that nuance is, like, essential.
Yeah, if we want to learn from it.
Yeah, it's like Emily's journey.
Exactly.
She started with this simple view,
Yeah.
but as she learned more
Yeah.
and considered different perspectives, her understanding got so much deeper.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's something we can all do.
It is.
Be curious,
Yeah.
look for different voices,
Yeah.
and be willing to, like, really consider ideas.
Even when they make us uncomfortable.
Right, even when we disagree with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really cool deep dive.
It has.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
what's, like, the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
I want them to remember that history is not just facts and figures.
Okay.
It's a living story
Yeah.
made up of the experiences and choices of so many different people.
And we're all part of it.
We are.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
And it's also a big responsibility.
It is. We have a lot to learn from the past.
Yeah, and we also have the chance to, like, contribute our own chapter.
Exactly. Our actions today
Yeah.
will shape the future.
Wow, so go out there.
Yes.
Be curious.
Explore.
Learn from the past.
Yeah.
And then use that knowledge to make a better future.
That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into history.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.